Dawn Wells nearly went too far. Try not to gasp. Just sit back and listen to a story about the drama that goes on behind the scenes on Gilligan's Island. Even when the director is called a cut, things aren't always perfect on set. Who would have thought? You may have chuckled along with Gilligan, Skipper, Lovey, and the rest of the group for years, but you probably didn't know these strange facts about the people who played them. The name Gilligan was chosen at random. A prominent character's name, especially one that features in the show's title, would seem to be carefully picked. Not the opinion of filmmaker Sherwood Schwartz. He just dialed a random number from the phone directory, and the recipient's name was Gilligan. We're not sure if the show would have been quite the success if Schwartz had pointed his finger at Kowalczyk. The plot was based on a Lucille Ball film. The concept of Gilligan's Island will be familiar to anyone who has watched the Lucille Ball movie, Five Came Back. The beloved comedy was motivated not just by the Bible, but also by the 1939 film in which a group of survivors of an aviation disaster get stranded in the Amazon. They required a top-tier cast now that the series name and premise were determined if they actually intended to make the show memorable. Next, let's delve into some of the cast's behind-the-scenes secrets. The original theme music was created by John Williams. John Williams is now widely regarded as one of the greatest cinematic composers of all time. But when he was just Johnny Williams, surprisingly, the creators of Gilligan's Island passed him over. A different composer was hired before the comedy debuted, and the theme tune in the show's premiere is totally different. The lagoon in the Pacific Ocean was really in California. Is there a previously unknown Pacific Ocean island? Unfortunately, this is not the case. Following the cancellation of the original plan to film in Malibu, CBS erected a set for the show on their California Studio City site. If you were lucky enough to visit the location, you could have been a castaway yourself. The set lasted over 30 years before being plowed over to make way for a parking lot. Natalie Schafer wasn't optimistic about the show's chances. To be honest, CBS executives were far from the only ones who believed Gilligan's Island was a flop. Lovey Howell, played by Natalie Schafer, was a skeptic. She apparently didn't believe a sitcom with such a stupid concept would survive. We couldn't imagine anyone else portraying Lovey, so we're glad she stayed. Two main characters are absent from the first season credits. When Russell Johnson and Dawn Wells first saw the opening credits, they may have been dissatisfied. Why? Do you remember the words to that iconic song? The Professor and Mary Ann are simply referred to as the rest in the lyrics, although the rest of the characters have names. After Bob Denver stood up for them in the second season, this was corrected. A grim satire follow-up was created. Tom Carson of Esquire magazine created the Gilligan's Island narrative in 2003, and it was very depressing. True admirers of the original would have been disappointed with the outcome. Mary Ann has an affair in the dark parody. Lovey acknowledges that her marriage was a sham, and the professor is involved in construction of the atomic bomb that was dropped on Nagasaki. So what about Gilligan? He spends his time in a psychiatric institution and is subjected to electroshock therapy. We're relieved that wasn't the case. Dawn Wells was not allowed to sing. Dawn Wells had a lot of skills, but singing wasn't one of them. Jackie DeShannon was hired to dub over her parts in songs like For He's a Jolly Good Fellow, since the actress was tone deaf. Wells' original voice was heard in an episode when Mary Ann's caterwauling was part of the narrative, and the producers soon saw they needed to dub her from then on out. Woo! Gilligan was on the verge of getting a dinosaur as a pet. Gilligan's Island may have evolved into a mini Jurassic Park series if Hunt Stromberg Jr. had his way. Yeah, that's right. The creators had a wonderful notion of providing Gilligan with a pet dinosaur. To Schwartz's relief, budget constraints finally put an end to that strange plan. Ginger wasn't well liked on set. Tina Louise's wish to distance herself from the play explains why she was not a popular character during filming. While the rest of the Gilligan's Island cast used to laugh and joke in between takes, Louise liked to be alone, according to Bob Denver. Gilligan's given name is still a point of contention. Have you ever wondered what Gilligan's given name is? Is it possible that Gilligan has the surname Gilligan? Sherwood Schwartz, the show's creator, referred to the hero as Willie in a press release, although this was not regarded as an official reaction. But wait a second, the only characters who used their surnames were the incredibly wealthy Howells, according to Schwartz, so what is the truth? Carol O'Connor was nearly cast as the Skipper after a successful audition. Despite making the shortlist, producers were afraid that O'Connor's portrayal of the part was not enticing enough. It's probably for the best, as we can't imagine the Skipper ever saying groinecologist. Carol O'Connor rose to fame after bringing the grouchy Archie Bunker to life. He came close to receiving his big break when he auditioned for the part of the Skipper on Gilligan's Island years before. The show continued to live. Even though Gilligan's Island ended in 1967, its characters appeared on other television shows for many years thereafter. In the 1980s, the Skipper, the Professor, Marianne, and Gilligan all appeared on Alf for an episode in which an alien falls in love with the program. Several cast members appeared in a scene on Roseanne. Owen Denver replicated his most famous scene for a McDonald's commercial. Yes, it was Gilligan eating French fries. Schaefer performed all her stunts herself. Natalie Schaefer proved that age is just a number throughout her stint as Lovey, and despite her advanced age, the actress was eager to execute her own stunts. Schaefer was putting her own life in danger when Lovey dove into the dirt or lagoon. According to the actress, swimming and eating ice cream helped her stay in shape. It had to compete with similar sitcoms. CBS's president, Jim Aubrey, was not a fan of the show. He didn't like the whole island thing. He thought the show would be better suited to being shot at a fancy resort. Aubrey then commissioned a second comedy based on the same notion to back up his case. In contrast, the Baileys of Balboa was canceled after only a season. As a result of the incident, Aubrey lost his job. A few bloopers made the cut. If you've seen Gilligan's Island several times, you've probably noticed one or two blunders. Parts of Los Angeles, for example, are visible above the trees on the allegedly deserted island in The Friendly Physician. The unmarried Gilligan may also be seen wearing Bob Denver's wedding ring in They're Off and Running. Tina Louise regretted doing the show. Years later, the movie legend claimed that the show had destroyed her career. Furthermore, to top it all off, Tina Louise's agent allegedly told her that Gilligan's Island would be her ticket to success. The actress was surprised to learn that she would have to share equal screen time with 6 other cast members. Worse, Louise is said to have had multiple conflicts with producers about her position. Maybe that's why she didn't feature in the film. Filming was stopped when JFK was assassinated. Following JFK's assassination, the cast and crew of Gilligan's Island were forced to take a break from filming the pilot. Following the tragic occurrence, U.S. officials closed down the Hawaii Navy base where the team was filming for 48 hours. Schaefer claimed to be younger than she was. Despite the fact that Natalie Schaefer and her on-screen husband, Jim Backus, looked to be the same age, we have some shocking news for you. The Lovey actress was a full 12 years older than Backus at the time of filming. Scandal. Schaefer tried everything she could to hide this, including asking in her contract that the camera not zoom in too close so that viewers wouldn't notice her wrinkles. The original option for the role of Gilligan was Jerry Van Dyke. Despite the fact that Bob Denver made Gilligan his own, he was not the producer's first choice. Dick's younger brother, Jerry Van Dyke, was the original candidate for the part, but he turned it down since the plot screenplay was the worst thing he had ever read. Van Dyke did, however, go on to star in the ridiculous My Mother the Car, so perhaps he didn't make the incorrect choice. In real life, Natalie Schaefer is rich. Natalie Schaefer didn't have to go too far to portray Lovey. The actress was already a wealthy woman when she earned the part of Thurston Howell III's greedy wife. Schaefer and her husband built their wealth in the post-war real estate market in Beverly Hills. There's no word on whether the couple received an oil company as a wedding present. Ginger was almost portrayed by Jane Mansfield. Tina Louise is the lone candidate for the role of Ginger, but believe it or not, she was about to lose her job to one of the era's most visible sex symbols. The filmmakers approached Jane Mansfield to play the movie star, but her third husband persuaded her to decline. Russell Johnson used to be a member of the military. Russell Johnson had a good career before his debut on Gilligan's Island, but it was nothing like his current one. After graduating from high school, the star joined the United States Army Air Forces as an aviation cadet. In an ingenious twist, he used his GI Bill funds to pay for acting classes, which led to his rising popularity as the professor. Some viewers thought the show was real. Some Gilligan's Island fans couldn't tell the difference between fiction and reality. When the episode was originally broadcast, worried viewers approached the American Coast Guard and requested assistance for the stranded Gilligan. Why not send one U.S. destroyer to rescue those unfortunate folks before they starve to death? One message asked. Perhaps because it was simply a TV show? The coconut cups were genuine. To be honest, one of the show's flaws was its lack of reality. But every now and again, what you saw on TV was the genuine thing. In the early episodes, producers used genuine, hollowed-out coconuts for the characters to drink from. However, these handcrafted props rapidly became filthy and were finally replaced with fakes. The professor almost had a nephew. Initially, the producers of Gilligan's Island contemplated sending the professor to the desert island with a young family member, a nephew to be exact. "Professor, are you there?" It's not quite easy to say. Fortunately, the bosses laughed it off because the ensemble already included a huge child in the figure of Gilligan himself. Schaefer just wanted to take advantage of the free vacation. Schaefer said that she only consented to take part in the Gilligan's Island pilot for the free trip to Hawaii. That's the type of lady we adore. Unfortunately, the strategy failed. When the show was picked up for a full season, the New Yorker was obliged to relocate to Los Angeles, and she was not happy. She cried so hard that many people around her believed that there had been a death in her family. The 7 deadly sins were represented by the characters. This is by far the strangest source of inspiration for Gilligan's Island. According to Sherwood Schwartz, each figure was meant to represent one of the Bible's 7 deadly sins. Along with the slothful Gilligan, the Howells greed and gluttony, and lusty Ginger, there was envious Mary Ann, the pompous professor, and the wrathful Skipper. It makes perfect sense. Mary Ann was almost a secretary called Bunny. The cast of Gilligan's Island was not the only thing that changed after the pilot was approved, and if the producers had committed to their initial ideas for Mary Ann and Ginger, the show would have been very different. They were both going to be secretaries, and Mary Ann was going to be called Bunny. Raquel Welch, a relatively unknown actress at the time, was turned down by producers. Raquel Welch was one of several actresses who auditioned for the role of Mary Ann, but bosses thought she wasn't pure enough. Welch, on the other hand, was the last to laugh. She landed a lucrative agreement with 20th Century Fox just a year before Gilligan's Island was canceled, and the rest, as they say, is history. Dawn Wells struck a profitable business transaction. Dawn Wells not only landed the part of Mary Ann, but she was also told that she would be compensated for the rest of her life. Yes, because of her acute financial acumen, the actress was the only cast member who requested more than a salary and short-term royalties. Wells' earnings increased with each episode that was broadcast. Alan Hale Jr. once fractured his arm on set. Alan Hale Jr. shattered his arm after falling from a coconut tree. But ever the hero, the actor continued filming for the remainder of the day without seeking medical attention. The actors were not genuinely stuck, but it didn't stop them from getting injured on the island from time to time. That was the situation with Hale. Bob Denver came dangerously close to being mauled by a lion. Hale Jr. wasn't the only cast member who risked his life on Gilligan's Island. During one particularly frightening moment, a lion leapt at Gilligan. However, the on-set trainer's quick thinking saved Bob Denver. Fortunately, the only thing that was damaged was a set of ripped-apart twin beds. Bob Denver threatened to have his name removed from the credits at one point. Bob Denver was not only the most daring member of the group, but also the most devoted. Even though they were merely acknowledged as the rest in the first season, the actor once requested that his name be removed from the show's opening credits unless the names of the professor and Mary Ann were also added. CBS promised the creators a 4th season. Unfortunately, Gilligan's Island's 3rd season was a ratings flop. Regardless, CBS convinced Sherwood Schwartz to extend the show for a 4th season. What's the story's moral? Nothing in the television industry is guaranteed. After being forced to give up its schedule to Gunsmoke, the network canceled Gilligan's Island before season 4 was completed. The cast purchased homes close to the set. It was made even more difficult by the fact that some of the cast members were on vacation when the cancellation was announced. When the stars returned, they may have had a few choice words for Schwartz. He'd promised a fourth season, and some cast members had purchased homes near the California studio as a consequence of his assurance. The creator's arch-enemy inspired the name of the SS Minnow. What was the meaning behind the name of the charter boat that sank with the crew and passengers? It was named after Schwartz's arch-enemy, Newton Minnow. The previous chairman of the Federal Communications Commission enraged Schwartz by describing television programming as a vast wasteland. Minnow must have laughed when he recognized the name. CBS had to be persuaded to produce the show. The abrupt cancellation of Gilligan's Island by CBS was largely predictable. After all, the network was skeptical about the show from the start. Jim Aubrey didn't help matters by complaining about the need to keep the characters on the island. Aubrey was eventually persuaded when it was decided that the castaways would be rescued if the show's ratings fell. Alan Hale Jr. went through a secret audition process for the part. Alan Hale Jr. was dead set on landing the Gilligan's Island job by any means necessary. He was desperate for his audition, enough to take him away from the western he was filming in Utah when he was told he couldn't attend his audition. After a horseback ride, hitching, and a journey to Los Angeles, the actor was finally rewarded for his efforts. Jim Backus was a slacker. Despite his reputation for being finicky, Jim Backus was far more popular on set than Louise. He did, however, have a reputation for being frugal. Dawn Wells said that the actor treated her and Natalie Schafer to lunch on a regular basis. However, when the bill arrived, Backus discovered, oh so conveniently, that he had forgotten his wallet, leaving the others to cover it. 6 women have played Ginger. It's nearly unanimous. Tina Louise wonderfully represented Ginger, the bombshell superstar, despite the fact that, as previously said, she wasn't really fond of the job. Other actresses took on the character of Ginger in later spin-offs and sequels. Kit Smith initially played the role of the pilot, however the character was presented as a secretary. After Louise left the island for good, Judith Baldwin took her position in the following TV films, Rescue from Gilligan's Island and The Castaways. The flag in the opening credits is at half-mast. As previously stated, the cast and crew learned of John F. Kennedy's assassination on the penultimate day of filming in Hawaii. On the show, there's a brief, subtle reminder of this historical tragedy. As the Minnow pulls out of the harbor in the first season's opening titles, the U.S. flag is seen flying at half-mast. Charles Maxwell was the uncredited voice on the radio. The castaways are continually listening to the news on the portable radio throughout the series. The only thing that kept them connected to the real world was the man's voice. The announcer on the radio is Maxwell, a seasoned character actor who has appeared on television programs such as Bonanza, Gunsmoke, Lawman, Rawhide, and The Rifleman. Gilligan's Island was his longest recurring part, yet he was never given credit for it. It was originally a 6-hour ride, not a 3-hour tour. The duration of the charter is a more visible major difference between the pilot and the series. The lyrics to the first theme tune describe a 6-hour ride. That schedule was chopped in half somewhere along the line throughout the creative process. We're not clear why the decision to remove 3 hours was made so abruptly. The band that sang the familiar theme song also sang the Ballad of Davy Crockett. Sherwood Schwartz and George Weil collaborated on the creation of the original version of the Ballad of Gilligan's Island, a charming little ditty. The Wellingtons then sang it. The folk rock band also sang the Ballad of Davy Crockett, which was featured in the Disney miniseries Davy Crockett. As their characters increased in significance and appeal, the Gilligan's Island tune would later be modified to incorporate the Professor and Mary Ann. The earlier version simply called them The Rest. The Wellingtons also appeared as the Mosquitoes on the show. Despite the fact that the Wellingtons were no longer included in the theme tune, they did make an appearance on the show in the second season episode Don't Bug the Mosquitoes. The band washed up on the island's coast as the parody band The Mosquitoes. This was a corny parody of the renowned Beatles band. The Howells didn't have a child, and then did. According to reports, Lovey and Thurston Howell had no children when they first produced the series. However, in the third and final and strange reunion film, The Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island, the couple had a son all of a sudden. The cast also includes David Ruprecht, the presenter of the game program Supermarket Sweep. This was due to Jim Backus, the original Thurston, being in terrible health. A Western knockoff of Gilligan's Island is called Dusty's Trail. After Gilligan's Island, Schwartz struck gold again with the comedy The Brady Bunch. His third, though, was not a charm. The creator-producer sought to remake Gilligan's Island in a Wild West setting in 1974. Dusty's Trail, starring Bob Denver and Forrest Tucker of F Troop fame, was the finished product. The pitch had a wealthy couple, a genius, a farm girl, and a beauty bombshell. Unfortunately, the show was canceled after one season, but 4 episodes were reassembled for the theatrical film The Wackiest Wagon Train in the West. The estimated location of the island is about 250 miles southeast of Hawaii. Many program watchers are curious about the location of the island. Several somewhat specific places are mentioned across the 3 seasons in X Marks the Spot. The island is believed to be located about 140 degrees latitude and 10 degrees longitude. It should be emphasized that these are illogical coordinates. In the episode Big Man on a Little Stick, their location is given as 110 degrees longitude and 10 degrees latitude. These coordinates would place the island off the Pacific coast of Mexico. Finally, in It's a Bird, It's a Plane, the U.S. Navy spots Gilligan in a jetpack flying over the island. The location is reported to be 250 miles south of Hawaii. The Gilligan's cast once impersonated the cast of Roseanne. Tina Louise was finally reuniting with her Gilligan's Island co-stars in an odd location, the Roseanne television studio. Everyone involved had a bit of a homecoming. Because the 2 programs were shot on the same soundstage, the castaways played Roseanne characters in the episode Sherwood Schwartz, A Loving Tribute, Louise as Roseanne, Dawn Wells as Darlene, and Bob Denver as Jackie, as seen in this still. Alan Hale played a chef named Gilligan on Batman. The police chief enters a diner and sidles up to the counter in an episode of Batman titled The Og and I, starring Vincent Price as Villain Egghead. After that, the cook seems to take the police chief's command. Some viewers may recognize the kind face. Alan Hale is the chef. The head of the police then tells the chef, "Right, Gilligan, 1 large milk and a hot pastrami." There were 2 cartoon spin-offs. In the 1970s, spin-offs of famous comedies were quite popular. Gilligan's Island inspired 2 spin-off programs, the last of which launched the castaways into space. Gilligan's Planet, which ran just 13 episodes, was the iconic studio's penultimate Saturday morning animation, since the firm turned to generating material after that.